there was News Track, and there was Eyewitness. I just think in terms of that, it's some kind of proto-television. We've really come a long distance. But for me, we've all watched Babri demolition from completely different angles. But the one thing we experienced very clearly was being put out of business the minute the demolition starts. Around 12 o'clock is when the action all starts in a very visible, apparently chaotic way, but there's a clear method in whatever was going on. The whole idea was to battle the reporters and ensure that they don't cover it and put us out, put our tools out, take away cameras, beat up people. And I really wonder in 2017 if it's necessary, for that to happen for us to stop reporting. So for me, that is the biggest kind of change that's happened, that, if there is a mob, there is a case of vandals trying to pull a mosque down, they needed to beat up reporters to get them to shut up. Now that may not be necessary now, so I think that's like, for me, the huge change. But just, everybody's kind of talked about things, just a couple of things. Ayodhya, one was, I'm sure all of you also went there before that. It's one of the most beautiful towns of India, I think. There's just something so spectacular in terms of scenery as you go on the banks of the Saryu. The skyline is beautiful. There is, just at sunset, the true mystery about what you're looking at. Is it a spire? Is it a temple? Is it a mosque? There is this. Maybe we add more romance to it because we know the facts there, but it's truly a lovely city. And when you go there, you were before then, I think before, say, 92, till about 91, you'd be welcomed into several little homes, and they tell you that Ramji ka yahi janam hua tha. So, from there to go on to a place where through GPS specification, you fixed ki mandir yahi aayenge, I think that was the huge leap that happens in 1992. And that also kind of signified how any kind of diversity about the understanding of Ramji, about where he could have been born, what happened, is just brought to that one single point focus. So I think that was a success of this Ayodhya movement. And of course, there was this kind of complete wiping away of Sita. So there was no Siya Ram, it was Sri Ram, but that was done very well. So I think when Said talks about how, Ramji was not discussed, he was kind of just discussed as a solo god without, in the image that they wanted to cast him in. The other thing that we kind of, which struck us as we, you'll be knowing all this, but just a first-hand account, is when we went back to our footage of the people talking to us, because a lot of us younger reporters then, I was 24 and a half or something, we were completely, we were nervous about construction, because the whole idea was that there'll be some kind of construction, so we weren't even thinking demolition. Talking to random people just outside the masjid complex, they kept talking about कि अभी रुकिए आप 12 बजे देखिएगा हम अंदर जाने वाले हैं 12 बजे, and we said just tell us about what you're going to do. So we kind of ignored those red flags. We didn't realize them, and it's only later when we were reviewing the tapes that we figured there was a very clear plan. There was a time. There was a time when journalists were taken away, and as Mark and others, Sita Rasoi was one place. Some of us were, behind Manas Bhavan. The others were scattered, and some people were just wearing those gamchas of Jai Shri Ram to seek their safety and were hanging around. So that was the one thing, that there was a systematic planning. And the other thing that was striking about Ayodhya was, I think for our generation, born well after independence, had no memory of partition, Hindus or Muslims, we had no friends or relatives that you remembered, or partition was not a living project. Ayodhya was kind of a real refresher course in how that went about. So I think that whole kind of internal drawing of the line of a very significant part of India as foreign was defined and held. And after that, you had variants of that line kind of emerge in the politics. I think 25 years from then on, we've had varied kinds of politics. You've had coalition governments, you've had, Congress has headed a coalition for 10 years. So you had lots of things. But of course, after 2014, you have the first majority government coming in after Ayodhya on, which represents a certain kind of politics and is very clear about it. The last thing I'd like to say is that in India, places which are revered or contested by more than one community, Hindu and Muslim or Christians and all, always seem to have a magic about them, like you might argue Ajmer Sharif or Baba Budangari, Sufi shrines, because both go to worship there. You'd meet Hindus and Muslims. Shirdi Sai Baba, there's always this thing about, was he Hindu, Muslim, should it be saffron or not? More than areas of contest, there are points of confluence, which is where I thought Ayodhya should have been about. And I have mixed parentage personally, so I take it very, very personally. I'm half Hindu and half Muslim, so that apart. But, for me, it's a moment of celebration if the two come together. So for Ayodhya, the fact that you're Hindu and Muslim becomes exactly the point of contest. Was again, I think, the breaking point where a very regressive kind of politics, and not necessarily just Hindu, but in the way it chose to define citizenship very, very narrowly, started rearing its head. And you actually had the very brilliant instrumental kind of use of politics, perhaps for the first time after Muhammad Ali Jinnah, in using politics to really draw lines in the kind of Indian sand. I say Indian sand because I hope that it's negotiable and that it's wipeable and it's changeable, and we'll soon zigzag our way to a better future. So that's my memory of Ayodhya.